Hello guys, welcome back to our another yet video on ethics keyword series, and we'll be dealing with the word called empathy. And again, this particular series is designed in such a manner that it becomes your score differentiator. It becomes the score differentiator. So it will not only deal with examples and definitions, it will move beyond. It will help you to understand the core concept and a 360-degree understanding of that particular concept that will help you to elevate the marks if you're getting stuck at 85, 90, 95, right? So before we go into the, the lecture, let's watch a very brief video which you will find very interesting.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people.
Yes. Sympathy and empathy, these are 2 different words. We cannot use them similarly, and they connote different meaning. If sympathy is about, I feel sorry for you, right? I'm sorry that you're going through this. Or sympathy says, I feel for you. Empathy is, I am feeling the same pain as you are. I can't imagine how this feels, but I am here with you, right? So it is feeling with another. You put yourself into that particular person's shoe and feel the same pain that particular person is going through, right? So in this case, if sympathy says, I feel for you, empathy will say, I feel with you. Let's understand the origin of the word empathy. It comes from the German word Einfühlung. Einfühlung, it comes from the German word Einfühlung, which was introduced in English in 1909. Now let's understand the definition of the word empathy. Empathy is the ability to recognize, understand, and share the thoughts and feelings of another person, animal, or fictional character. Each and every word is important when you are writing or when you are quoting this particular definition. If the question demands, we have to mention each and every word. And let's understand these words which are there. Ability. So first of all, it's an ability. Of course, it's an acquired ability, right? If you practice, empathy is an acquired ability, right? To recognize, understand. Recognize means what kind of feeling, the what of it. Recognize is the what of it, right? Recognize means what of it. Understand is the why that particular person is going through that particular pain, whatever the pain is, right? So recognize the kind of pain that particular person is, understand why, the source of the pain, and share the thoughts and feelings of another person. Now, share the thoughts and feeling in the sense there is a frequency match in the thought and the feeling, right? There's a bandwidth match in the thought and the feeling. And because of this bandwidth match, right, empathy is a superior quality than sympathy, right? In sympathy, there is no bandwidth match. Like, we understand that particular person is in pain. But in empathy, there is a bandwidth match. Now, this is very important. It is just not only person. It is your animal and fictional character. We'll just not write person. It is animal and fictional character for a reason. Recently, we have seen Supreme Court has passed a judgment against the street dogs, right? For that, many dog lovers, many animal lovers have come to the street protesting that particular judgment, right? In case of fictional characters, when we watch movies, right? When we see something bad happening to our hero or somebody whom we associate ourselves with, right? Then we feel empathy for that particular character, right? In Greek, this particular term is called catharsis, like where we purge ourselves from all the emotions because the pain that particular person goes through, and we imitate that pain, right? So again, the definition of empathy is the ability to recognize the what of it, understand the why of it, the source of it, and share the thought and feeling of another, share the thought and the matching of the bandwidth, right? Of whom? Of a person, animal, and fictional character. Okay, now what we will do, we will understand 3 types of empathy. Okay guys, we have understood the definition of empathy. Now let's understand the three kinds of or three types of empathy. Now it is very important because the moment you use these three types of empathy and segregate your mains answer, it shows maturity, that not only you are having a you don't have superficial understanding of empathy, but you have studied on empathy, right? You have made or you have done proper research on empathy, right? This shows maturity in the content. Okay. Three types of empathy. The first kind is your affective empathy. What does it mean? Affective empathy means the ability to experience the feelings of the other people, right? It is the genesis of your empathy. It is the first instant when you when there is a bandwidth match with that particular person who is going through that pain, right? So you tell, I feel with you. I feel with you what you're going through, right? Feeling that experience, that what that particular person is going through. Once that happens, when there is an emotional connect, then what happens? Remember what the source of it, right? Remember cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy means the moment there is an emotional connect, you put yourself into that particular person's shoe. The moment you put yourself into a particular person's shoes, then you rationally try to understand that what is the source of that particular person's pain, right? Or trouble, right? So here rationality comes to play, here reason comes to play, right? The process of ratiocination is very important. Process of ratiocination, what the term ratiocination means, what? It is the process of thinking rationally, right? So the ability to rationally understand the person's feeling and thoughts, right? Last but not least, the moment these, like you have effectively, you have, put yourself into that particular person's shoe, and then you have understood that what he's going through, then comes the most important, compassionate empathy. Compassionate empathy means that I understand what you feel and I want to help. And it can be of any help. Like it does not mean that you have to, the help will be, monetary or the materialistic. It can be any help. If somebody is showing or somebody is sharing the pain, you just sit with that particular person and hear him or her, right? That is also an action towards, that particular person. That is also a very empathetic attitude. That is also compassionate empathy, that you're lending your ears to her or him, right? So the need to react and provide help in any way you can so as to mitigate that particular person's problem, right? So these are the three types of empathy. We have understood the definition and types. Now let's understand why empathy matters. Empathy matters because it directs actions. It motivates selfless actions, which is your altruism. Right? In this particular case, you're not thinking about your own self-interest. Your primary goal is what? Your primary goal is to alleviate the pain of others, right? What is the second reason why empathy matters or empathy is important? Because of moral judgment. It guides your moral judgment because it comes from a very good place of helping others, right? It guides your moral judgment. Now let's see how empathy helps in making our administration more humane, right? The first is it helps better problem diagnosis, right? Officer sees the barrier, real barrier, not on paper, not on documents. See the real barrier when they come in front of the people and hear them, listen to them, right? Put themselves into their particular shoe, right? The affective part, the cognitive part is very important. The affective and the cognitive part of empathy, right? I feel for you. I feel with you, right? I understand that what is the source of your problem. So this is the first thing that it helps, that it helps you to diagnose the problem in a better manner. What is the second thing? The second thing is it helps in better communication. Of course, it will help you in better communication because once you understand the problem of others, you have put yourself into that particular person's shoe, right? You are supported by affective empathy and you're supported by cognitive empathy. Then what happens when these two align, when your heart and your mind aligns, then your words flow, right? Your words flow. So there is a better communication, right? You communicate more with clarity, right? Then we have trust. Obviously, the moment you empathize with the people, empathize with the citizen, right? It brings what? It brings legitimacy to the governance. It brings trust to the governance, right? So again, empathy plays a very foundational role in building trust in the governance, building building, legitimacy in the governance. Last but not least, equity and inclusion, right? Empathy helps in equity and inclusion. So citizens are not files, citizens are not numbers, citizens are not that small dot or a small value in the so-called census, right? What are citizens? Are individual being. They have individual concern, they have individual problems. For that, what they need is categorical. They need very tailor-made understanding of their problem, right? And hence, once an administration is empathetic administration, once an administration becomes an empathetic administration, it ensures what? It ensures equity and inclusion. Okay guys, now let's see some of the examples of empathy in public administration. One of the finest examples would be this Makkalai Thedi Maruthuvam, pardon my pronunciation, Makkalai Thedi Maruthuvam in Tamil Nadu, and Kerala community-based palliative care, where it's a kind of a doorstep, care, where the government is reaching out to the people. So if the people cannot reach out to the administration is reaching out. So this is again very action-oriented. It is compassionate empathy, right? Then another excellent example, and it is being often quoted, is Operation Suleimani in Kozhikode, and the particular IS officer which is associated is your IS Prasant Nair, right? So he created what? He provided a stigma-free meal without questioning the beneficiary's identity or poverty status, right? Again, I feel the pain. The particular person needs help but cannot approach the administration because he or she is feeling ashamed, right? So without identity, the administration is helping. Another excellent example would be your Telemanas, where with the rising, psychological distress, right? The government has instituted a 24/7 multilingual mental health support through National Public Health Infrastructure, which does what? Again, empathetically linked with people who are suffering from psychological issues, right? Last but not least, we have heard about Cafe Able. In Cafe Able in Thudukudi district in Tamil Nadu, what we have seen is that an IS officer, I currently cannot recollect the name, who has used the resources of the state to build what? To build a cafe which is completely run by the differently abled, right? So again, showing a very empathetic public administration towards the differently able, and ensuring what? Ensuring, remember, equity and inclusivity. We have studied equity and inclusivity. We have understood empathy. But when we run public administration, when we run, the state, we have understood previously from the last video we have done on objectivity that it is a very important core value when it comes to decision making, right? We make rational choices based on what? We make rational choices based on facts, figures, empirical, data, laws. So these are the things which help us to make very precise objective decision, right? Precise objective decision, and helps us to be what? Helps us to be non-partisan and impartial, right? So objectivity is the first value that helps us to be non-partisan and impartial, right? But if objectivity is the framework around which the administration stand, the cushion of that particular administration is provided by empathy, right? It provides what? It provides a balancing act of objectivity. It provides a balance to objectivity, right? It provides balance to objectivity. So empathy ensures what? Empathy ensures that the governance does not become cold, mechanical, or dehumanized, that the people, the citizens are not, brought down to, or they are not reduced to numbers, they are not reduced to cog in the machines. If we understand that empathy and objectivity, these are conflictual values, then how do we place empathy in our administration? So let's understand. So how do we place empathy in the administration? An administration which is run by objectivity, impartiality, being non-partisan, right? So how do we place empathy? We place empathy by making that empathy bounded by legality. So it's called legally bounded empathy. So it is legally bounded empathy, and we'll understand this particular term, legally bounded empathy. It is just not being empathetic to another person, but within the confines of legality. I will be empathetic, but within the confines of legality, within the confines of law, within the confines of the constitutional provisions, within the confines of the established norms, right, or constitutional morality. The moment, and there are scope. It's not that either or. It's not that if you are objective, you cannot be empathetic, or if you are being empathetic, you cannot be objective. No, there is no either or. And as there is no either or, there's an excellent way where we can be empathetic within the structure or the infrastructure of objectivity. And let's understand that particular process. Now let's understand the step-by-step process to ensure legally bounded empathy. The step-by-step process. The very first step is, and this is again a very rare commodity nowadays, is what? You hear fully, right? Give the citizen to speak, communicate her problems, communicate her grievance, right, or his grievance, right? So the very first step is ask that particular person to communicate what the grievances are, right? Right to speak, right? Then understand the context of the problem. Just don't see it superficially, right, from the surface level. Understand what is the genesis of the problem, right? Genesis, from where this particular problem emanates, right? Do you remember, right? To understand, in the definition, the word understand is there, right? Now, I'll tell you another thing, like this two particular value or talent, like hear fully and understand context, right? It is again very close to Buddhist ideals of right view of Gautam Buddha's, noble eightfold paths, right view, right? Right view means what? Right view means that to understand the particular problem fully once you have listened to the problems or the sufferings or the grievances, right? Right. Then comes what? Then the third step is use lawful discretion. Again, it's another Lord Buddha's path of right intention, right? Right intention. So once you have understood the problem and not a superficial or a surface level problem, you have understood, you went to the source of the problem, then use lawful discretion, right? Apply rules with fairness. Like it's not that you be biased and you go out of the administration, and that's what legally bounded means, right? You don't go outside the domain of administration. Use fair rules, right? And flexibility where it is allowed, right? Fair rules and flexibility where it is allowed. The moment you do that, whenever you use like flexibility, then always document it. Now this again very important. Record the reasons, right? You have used your discretion, right? You have used your discretion that yes, this is particular law. I'm going a bit away from that law. I'm using my discretion, right? But I'm recording it because at the end, what? At the end, my goal is to help that particular person, right? My end goal is what? End goal is to help that particular person, right? But it's not that without documentation. I will document the decision or the action that I have taken, right? Again, it is a part of what? Your impersonal. Remember, bureaucracy, impersonal bureaucracy, that whatever decision I have taken, I'm not taking that decision because that particular person I like. No, I have understood the problem, what he or she is going. I have empathized with that particular problem, and I have to take a decision which moves away or it kind of bend the rules, and I will hence document that particular rule, right? So document the decision clearly and objectively, that this is the particular reason I have deviated from the norm, right? Then comes very important. Now these the steps of 5, 6, 7 looks utopic, but again this is again makes your administration empathetic, and final goal is what? Just final goal is to improve trust in the administration. So what is number 4? The 5th step is offer accommodation and information, right? Now you tell them, you give them options. Look, these are the options that you have. Explain them fully. Right? Just don't tell them you take the step. No, you explain them fully. Look, these are the steps that you have. You make them part of the decision that you are taking, right? Then comes, again, giving the right to review and redress. Like probably like the decision that you have taken for that particular person, right, is right, is okay, but it can be wrong. So you have to give them or give that another person the right to what? Right to review and redress. Right, right to review and redress. That like, look, yes, this decision that I have taken, I have moved away from the law, I've taken this decision, but that decision could be wrong, right? So the right to review and redress should also come within what? Within the folds of legally bounded empathy. And last but not least, now this is the most important, never compromise equality before law, transparency, or public interest. Never compromise on that. Equality before law, your Article 14, right? Transparency is in the root of administration, right? And most importantly, public interest, because at the end of the day, you're a public servant. So these are the step-by-step process to do what? To ensure legally bounded empathy. So empathy and objectivity, these are not two different separate things. Objectivity is the infrastructure around which the steel frame stands. Empathy is that balance that is required to make the civil service what? Humane. And in this regard, let's see the quote of Mahatma Gandhi. And what does he say? It's a long quote. We obviously it will be difficult for us to quote the entirety of this particular quote, right? So we can just quote this till this few words. Recall the face of the poorest and the weakest when you're thinking of taking a decision, right? The poorest and the weakest, right? This shows what? This shows that empathetic attitude that you have to bring in your administration. Let's see some other quotes. So this is a quote by Alfred Adler, and it's a brilliant quote. It's a brilliant quote, and it says what? Empathy is seeing with the eyes of another, right? Eyes of another. Listening with the ears of another, right? And feeling with the heart of another, right? You transpose yourself to that particular person. You become that, I feel with you, remember, right? It's like whatever that particular person is going through, you feel for that particular person, right? Then comes Bill Bullard. Bill Bullard says the highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and live in another's world. Highest form of knowledge. Now, why he says it's the highest form of knowledge? Because you show humility in understanding the pain of others, right? You do what? You remove your ego. The ego is the greatest barrier for knowledge. Ego is the greatest barrier for knowledge, right? And remember, Socrates also said that. What did Socrates say? The only thing that I know is nothing. That means what? In order to know things, you have to sidestep your ego. You have to sidestep your ego, right? So ego is the greatest barrier for knowledge. The moment you become humble or you bow with humility, remove your ego, understand the pain of others, and that is the only way you can understand the pain of others, by removing the ego, right? That shows what? That shows the supreme form of knowledge. And then obviously the president, the ex-president of US, Barack Obama, he said we should talk more about our empathy deficit. It's concerning. In the world that we are staying right now, the conflicts that the world is seeing, be it in Ukraine, be it in the Middle East, or for that matter, the conflict that we have seen in our neighborhood, right? The thing which matters is empathy. And the world is going through empathy deficit. The world is going through empathy deficit, right? And the thing that we should be talking about empathy deficit. And nobody's talking about this, right? Okay.